Good evening and welcome. My name is Gary Leppel. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of the Greater Dayton area. It's a privilege to be here tonight to introduce the candidates, to answer questions that you submit, to answer questions that each of them have submitted for consideration, as well as questions that the League has developed for the candidates in this race. The League of Women Voters is proud to host this forum, particularly the Greater Dayton Area League of Women Voters. The mission of the League of Women Voters is to encourage the informed and active participation of citizens in government and to influence public policy through education and advocacy. The League of Women Voters is nonpartisan and neither supports nor opposes any political party or candidate. The League may take political action on issues on which member agreement has been reached, but never on candidates. As an example of the activities of the League, those include voter registration drives, publications and brochures, nonpartisan candidate forums such as we have tonight, presentations on radio, television, to school groups, and again, advocacy for legislative positions. We thank you all for coming out tonight. This is a good turnout for this special forum to provide an opportunity for you to meet and hear from the three candidates running in the July 13th Democratic special primary election for the 3rd congressional seat of Ohio. The three candidates, starting on my far left, are David Ezrati, Guy Fogel, and Joe Roberts. The winner of this special primary will have his name placed on the November 2nd, 2010 ballot as the Democratic candidate running against the Republican incumbent, Congressman Mike Turner. In addition, it's important to note that for this election only, the July 13th election only, there are only 4 specifically designated and assigned polling places in Montgomery County. It's our understanding that every registered voter in Montgomery County has been mailed by the Board of Elections information about the change and provided information about which polling location you've been assigned. The League of Women Voters has prepared special material for your use about these polling locations. We encourage you to pick it up on your way out. It's in the back. And share it with your friends and family who may be interested in casting a ballot on July 13th. The material provides a phone number, web addresses, and other information to verify those locations. Now let's start with our process for the evening. The format will be each candidate will first be given 3 minutes to introduce themselves and explain why they're seeking this office. Following that, I will pose questions from you or from the candidates or from the League for consideration by the candidates on a rotating basis. They'll each have 2 minutes to respond. We have our timekeeper in front for both the 3 minutes and 2 minutes. And as we get close to the end of the time we have, we'll wrap it up with 3 minutes for a closing comment from each of the candidates. I will pick the questions from those submitted based on what I think to be consistent with the flow we have and the balance of the questions. I will randomly, or in rotation rather, ask the question of each candidate first. So, based on where they're sitting and nothing else, I'm going to start this by asking candidate David Ezrati to introduce himself. We have a little history on that pronunciation. To introduce himself and tell us why he's running for this office.
This is going to be fun all night passing this microphone. Can you hear me okay in the back? Yes? My name is David Ezrati, and this is not the first time I've run for office. It probably will not be the last. Alan Belcher at the Dayton Daily News can't seem to understand why somebody might want to keep trying even though they fail. Some reason that's not okay with her. But if you ask Thomas Edison how many times he failed, or Michael Jordan, or Wayne Gretzky, they'll all tell you that if you're not failing, you're not trying. And if you're not learning from your errors, you're not progressing and moving forward. The errors in this country, to me, started in my own profession. It started with the Kennedy versus Nixon debates, where television changed the nature of the debate. We went from having a population looking at issues, records, ideas to who looked better on television. And from there it went downhill. Now, I'm not suggesting that JFK should have lost to Richard Nixon, but I am suggesting that the $5 billion that was spent in the last election cycle was way too much on 30-second sound bites and funding the media. We have to find a different way to pick our candidates, to discuss our ideas, and move this country forward. Because the system we have now gets us the best politicians money can buy. It's not working. We've got a pay-to-play system. Our local economy has been racked by your tax dollars, my tax dollars, being spent on what we call economic development. Economic development means your tax dollars subsidizing somebody like Bill Nudie, who runs NCR, and takes his $2,000 an hour while losing 2/3 of the company value, moving the corporate headquarters to New York for $1.5 million of the New York taxpayer dollars, and then holding up the state of Georgia for $100 million. This has got to stop. Now, I look at the top contributors from OpenSecrets.org, and number 2 from Mike Turner was NCR Corporation, giving him over $51,000. What did we get for that $51,000? And what did Congressman Turner do? There's only one candidate sitting up here who's gone head-to-head with Mike Turner and won. 5 times Mike Turner tried to put me away using the legal system and the power that he had. 5 times he lost. There is no one better suited to take on Mike Turner, and that's why I'm running. Thank you.
Pass the microphone.
Who's next? Thank you.
The mic goes next to Guy Fogel. Would you introduce yourself and explain why you're running?
Yes, absolutely. Good evening. Wow, this is awesome, because this is the way democracy is supposed to be. People coming together, having conversations, and making decisions. And David's absolutely right. Money has gotten in the way and has muddied the waters. This is an opportunity, however, to make a change and to take the money away from decision making and put it in the hands of people who are just like you. And I'm one of those people. I'm from here. I've taught school here, been on television here, worked in healthcare here, worked in hospice. I've had a small business here. And that makes me a unique candidate from the standpoint of I've been in the trenches on all those issues. There are people making decisions in healthcare who have no business making decisions because they've not been there. I've been in a classroom. There are people making decisions about education, and they wouldn't know a classroom if it hit them in the butt. There are also people making decisions about small business, and they don't have a clue. I'm one of those that falls into the slogan of, some people watch what goes on and they grin and bear it, while others smile and just do it. And that's the philosophy I have. I've sat back, I've grinned and bared it, and I can't bear it any longer, and that's why I'm running. Because there comes a time when it does have to stop. And it has to stop with somebody who carries the same message that the majority of the people in District 3 carry. And I believe that's me. Thank you.
Next to Joe Roberts, please introduce yourself and explain why you're running. Thank you.
First, I'd like to thank the League for sponsoring this forum this evening. Second, I'd like to thank the Montgomery County Democratic Party for letting us use their headquarters tonight. And third, I'd like to thank all of you for coming to see who I am and what I'm all about. My name is Joe Roberts. I'm a lifelong Daytonian, and I've dedicated the last 5 years of my life to working for progressive causes. I've worked and consulted on Democratic campaigns all over the United States, and I've even worked to fight against Sarah Palin not once but twice. I worked for Tony Knowles, who ran against her for governor in Alaska. More recently, I worked for the Obama campaign doing voter protection. I have fought to protect our environment. specifically against drilling in ANWR, the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. We were successful in that. I have fought to protect human rights when I worked for Reform Immigration for America. And I've fought to protect religious freedom when I used my efforts to support the State of Israel. Now I want to fight for you. And I want to fight for you to bring every single tax dollar that we possibly can back home. We have a congressman now who says that he will not request a single earmark. I want to fight for you to bring every stimulus dollar we can to put people back to work. Because I think that we should bring high-paying green sector jobs to our area. I hope tonight that I'll be able to answer all of your questions, and I look forward to your support on July 13th. Thank you.
The first question will first go to Guy Fogel, and then we'll rotate. The candidates have 2 minutes to answer these questions. The question is, Dayton has lost many of its major employers since the recession began. As a member of Congress, what steps could you take to start bringing jobs back into the community?
Well, for one thing, that's what's puzzling to me is how on God's green earth anybody, Republican or Democrat, would vote for Mr. Turner in a situation like this where thousands of jobs have left the building and he seemed to not have a clue. I went to Clinton County recently and they've been decimated by job loss. And in having conversations with those folks, having conversations with what they think will work for them, and then also in my time in the media and the time that I ran a small business here in this area, I've had a chance to find out what folks want. They want a level playing field. And one way that we can keep companies here is to reduce the tax rate, the business tax rate, to 25%. Right now, we're at a total disadvantage because it fluctuates. There's no consistency to it. It can be anywhere from 35% as much as 45%, depending on how the wind is blowing that day. That lack of consistency means businesses are not going to be consistent. I think another thing that we need to do is improve our schools here. And we've put the cart before the horse. People want good schools, and we're worried about right now testing and busing and these things. We need to figure out how to fund the schools. What do we want our schools to be? And then fund them, and then go from there. Another thing I think that will help us keep businesses here, especially with small businesses. I brought this up at the DDN editorial board the other day, and that is the payroll tax that is paid, small businesses specifically, and I would actually make it mid-sized businesses, those businesses that are upwards of 300 to 500 employees. For 1 year, they don't pay that business tax. They don't pay the payroll tax. That money's paid for by stimulus money that hasn't been used. That's already sitting there. We just redirect it. It'll pay for itself. The country's starting to rebound a little bit, but not here. And we need shock therapy. We need to put the paddles in the chest of the Miami Valley and shock the dickens out of it to get it back. Thank you.
Same question to David Israedi. As a member of Congress, what could you do to help bring jobs back into the community?
Mr. Fogel has one thing absolutely correct, and that is we need a level playing field. And I, as a small businessman, am sick and tired of seeing tax dollars handed out to major employers, large corporations, who are paying their CEOs millions of dollars and then turning around and closing factories, closing plants, shipping jobs overseas. That's what we've gotten. The Miami Valley invested in GM. We built a clear coat paint line. They said, oh, we're going to close if we can't keep making the trucks here, even though it was one of the top quality producing plants in the GM system. Oh, no, we can't afford to do this clear coat paint line. You've got to pay for it. So we paid for it. Where are those jobs now? We put all that money out into DHL. Mr. Turner's number, I don't know, 6 or 7 highest donor was UPS. Isn't that who DHL then hired to start shipping freight? We have to get out of the economic development business and put government back in the government business. We need to stop handing money out to the people who hand the money back to the politicians and just clear, stop, nowhere do your tax dollars go to private corporations unless it's returned for goods and services. It's time to stop corporate welfare, crony capitalism. It's time to make it illegal, because what we have is the playing field getting tilted this way and that way. And it's small business and large businesses alike that are finding they're competing with a competitor who's being financed by the government while you're not, and you're supposed to compete. We stop that, we level the playing field, things start getting better. Right now, real quick. Thank you.
Same question to Joe Roberts. What can a member of Congress do to help with job improvement in this area?
Well, I think there's some very basic places to start. Number one, we passed a stimulus bill. We know that the largest receiver of stimulus dollars is Ohio. The money's been set aside. Not all of that money has been appropriated yet. We have a congressman who, frankly, is in the minority party. It makes it very difficult for him to request those monies, especially when he railed on the floor against the stimulus bill and voted no. So I think we're in a position where there's $787 billion totally out there in the stimulus bill. And $82 billion, that's more than 10%, is directly focused at creating a green economy. And that does it in many different ways, appropriated at different levels. But I think that's where we really need to start. You know, we have to face the facts that the traditional manufacturing that we've done, you know, with Frigidaire and GM are probably not coming back. But we have state-of-the-art plants that all they need to do is retool, and they can build something great. That's easy to do. We bring in stimulus dollars, we put them to work, retool those plants, build fuel cells, we build wind turbines, we build solar panels that will not only bring a green economy to Dayton, but will make it vibrant. You know, I think it's crucial that we look to the future and we have a place where, you know, we're the green technology Silicon Valley. We have kids who are graduating in California from college and saying, I want to go to Dayton because that's where innovation is, that's where there's jobs, and that's where we're going to progress. And I think we can do it, but it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take a serious change in Washington and some serious leadership to make it happen. And I intend to do that.
Thank you. The next question, first we'll go to Joe Roberts. Please explain what it is about your educational, family, employment, or other experience background that makes you a good choice to serve this district in Congress.
I'm glad you asked that question, whoever asked that question. But you know, I think it's a good question. It does give you, you know, your family and your background is what makes you who you are. And I come from a family of working people who have always, you know, kept their nose to the grindstone and done the right thing and hoped it paid off. And I think in the past 5 years, those working people, you know, have been kicked around. We haven't seen the average working guy been able to move ahead. You know, it used to be that organized labor built the middle class, and you could have a middle class job, work at a factory, and support your family and have a good life. But it's not that way anymore, and we've gotten away from what makes us American. American dream is dying slowly for most Americans. We're going into a system where we have the rich and we have the poor, and that's not where we want to be as a country. So we really need to take hold and look at, you know, what made us great in the past and what made my family great, some of the hardest working people I know, and figure out what's a real way to bring that back. And I think there's a few easy ways to do that. Again, I think bringing in new manufacturing is a great way to do that. I think that supporting our community college especially, so they can retrain workers who have lost their jobs and get them ready for a new economy is a wonderful idea. And I think that, you know, really focusing on education and putting our young people into programs that are going to bring them up to speed with the 21st century economy. Those are all three really great ideas, and we can work to do it. But again, it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take a lot of leadership. And we just don't have that leadership now.
Thank you. Same question to Dave Ezrati. What is there about your educational, family, employment, or other experiences that make you a good fit for the 3rd Congressional District?
Thanks, Gary. I'm very different from these other 2 candidates and from Congressman Turner. I'm a first-generation American. My father had to learn 3 languages by the age of 10. He came here to America because he wasn't welcome in other countries. My mother is English. She came over here because he came here. And it gives you a different perspective, not only on the world, but on what it means to be an American. And if you need to really understand that, I have a book that my father wrote to me. He wrote it in 1968, 1969. And he wrote it to give to me when I was to turn 18, because he thought I might have to make a choice of being an American citizen or a Canadian citizen, because we were living in Canada at the time. My father moved to Canada not because he was avoiding the draft. He'd already served almost 20 years in the Army, but because he was afraid of what Richard Nixon was doing to this country. He was just a little early. Everything that he was worried that Nixon would do, Bush did later. But it gives me a very different perspective. And something else that gives me a different perspective is that I went and followed in his footsteps, went in the Army to learn how to serve this country. And it's that kind of fight and tenacity. The skills I learned out at a place called Camp McCall, where most of you wouldn't want to be for very long, that's what gives me the skills to come out and take on Congressman Turner. Someone who I've watched campaign from his very first campaign, because we were both on the same campaign trail. I know him better than anyone that's run before him, and I am the person who could take the fight to Mike Turner, and that's what we're here for. We don't want him hand over another election with 20 points. We want to make it close. We want to make people question him. We want to ask questions. That's why I'm here. Thank you. Mr. Fogle.
Yes.
Same question.
Same question?
Same question to Guy Fogle. What is it about your education, family,
Oh.
personal experiences that make you best qualified to serve in the 3rd Congressional
Okay.
District?
You know, in Carlisle, it's a small town. It's in Warren County. And that's where I grew up. And it took me several years to lose the twang. Sometimes it's still there. But I remember when I was about 5 years old, I stole a piece of bubble gum. Used to have stores called IGAs. They're basically Kroger's. I don't know if IGA still exists, but I stole bubble gum and I got in the car. I unwrapped that bubble gum, and my older sister said, "Mom, he's got gum." My mother pulled me out of the car, dragged me in, and made me hand that gum back over and apologize to the store manager. I then got home, Dad found out, and I had to do chores to pay that money back. You'd be surprised how much chores you have to do to pay back a 3-cent piece of bubble gum. But about 9 years later, I had it paid off. But that taught me a lesson, and that's what it was like in Carlisle, that you have to be accountable for things, that you have to work for things. And that's that middle-class background that many people here have, but as both candidates have pointed out, we're losing. And I remember I got a phone call when I was teaching school, and I knew the call was coming, and I hopped in my car, and I drove to Kettering Hospital, and I walked in, and my dad was sitting on the edge of his bed. And he said, "Today's the day, son." And I said, "Dad, are you going to die?" And he put his arm around me, and he said, "I want to tell you how proud I am of you. I want to tell you how much I love you." And he said, "And I want to give you a piece of advice. It's not about you. It's about what you can do for others." And that's the upbringing I have, and that's the upbringing that has stayed with me. And it's that working class, be accountable background. And that's what I bring to the table. Thanks.
Thank you. The next question, partially from a member of the audience. What's the solution? It goes to David Zarate first. What is the solution to campaign finance reform concerns? And more specifically, what's the proper role of corporations in American elections?
Okay, the proper role of corporations in elections is real simple. they don't belong. They don't vote, period. Corporations are not a person. They have no rights as a person. And we've been fooling ourselves that you can get away with murder, with spilling oil, with destroying communities, with tearing apart people's pension plans and getting away with it because you're a corporation. Our country has been destroyed by corporations. If you want to watch a movie, watch The Corporation. It's a documentary. And they say the corporation is a sociopath if it was a person. And that is very much the truth if you think about it. Because it doesn't care about its workers. It doesn't care about its communities. It cares about itself. We have to bring back a kind of government that cares about the people. Because the people are what made this country great. Somewhere along the line, we've lost track of that. Less than 50% of the people vote. When they go to vote, they get a choice, basically the lesser of two evils, or in this case, the lesser of three. This isn't what we signed up for. I believe that we need to change the way we run elections. Everything from voting on Tuesday when people work, to how we have primaries. I believe in instant runoff voting, where you get to rank the candidates, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then you need to look this up and find out how it works, because I'm not going to have enough time to explain it. But we need to get other voices. There are 435 members of Congress, and they're all either Democrats or Republicans, with the exception of maybe 3. Something's wrong here. It's time that we take the money out of politics. We can pay for it ourselves, thank you. It's a lot cheaper than paying for the pork, the sweetheart deals, and the best politicians money can buy, because we're not the ones buying them. We've got to stop that. Thank you.
Same question to Guy Fogel. Generally, what is the proper method of campaign finance reform, and specifically, what's the proper role of corporations in American elections?
Well, first of all, it's probably one of the few times that I'm going to agree with Mr. Esrati. And for no other reason that he's absolutely right about corporate America. They have no business being involved in the electorate process. It's clouded the waters. It's muddied the picture. There are a lot of things that are coming out of the legislature that just should never happen. And you're the one that pays the price for it. And I think it's a disgrace, and it's disturbing more than anything else. I had a cup of coffee recently with Mike Bach, sitting here in the front row. And I used to teach school with Mike. I don't know him incredibly well, but we were having a conversation, and it centered around how democracy's broken. And it is. And the story that I go back to is all the area oncologists selected me to go to Washington, D.C. to be an advocate for the Patient Bill of Rights. This was right after 2001. And I had one-on-one meetings lined up with the area political figures. One such meeting was with George Voinovich. And I remember sitting in his office. We get probably 20 seconds into the conversation, and I'm leading up to about how we need to work for patients, and we need to have a patient advocate system set up so you can have your health care issues answered. Not even a minute into it, he stands up and he looks at his watch and he says, "Are we about done here?" And I said, "Excuse me?" And he said, "Are we about done here?" And I said, "Apparently so." I went outside and I called the Patient Advocate Congress. They were kind of the group that was putting it together. And I said, "What is the deal with that?" And they said, "Well, you didn't talk money. He has a lot of pharmaceutical companies that pay his bills and have put him in office, and he doesn't want to hear words you say. That's why this has to change, and it has to happen quickly. And it's not going to happen until those career politicians that are in office, such as Mike Turner, are removed." Thank you.
Same question to Joe Roberts. Generally, what's the proper method of campaign finance reform? What's the proper role of corporations in American elections?
Well, I think the first thing to talk about here is that, Supreme Court made a huge mistake when saying that corporations were individuals. That doesn't make any sense. There's nothing about a corporation that makes it an individual. It doesn't vote. It does not pay taxes like an individual would. It's completely different. I think the House took a huge step in the right direction when they passed the Disclose Act last week that would close that loophole in the law. It would require that the CEO of a corporation would have to actually sit in front of the camera for an entire commercial if they were to run one, which I don't think that we're going to see too much of. People don't want to be tied to that. But we need to go a lot farther. I think that a system of public campaign financing would be a good option. It's probably not going to happen. And it's probably not going to happen in our lifetime if it does. And so we are at a point where we have to, as candidates, raise money to be able to get our message across to people. Now, that money should not come from companies. It shouldn't come from labor unions in the way that they were talking about in the Disclose Act. It shouldn't come from anything like that. What it should come from is average, everyday people standing up and saying, you know what, I think you've got great ideas, and I think you're going to take our country in the right direction, and I'd like to give you $25, or I'd like to give you $50 because I believe in your message, and I believe that you can make our country a better place. And I think that that's the right direction to go in, and I think that's the way that I intend to run a campaign anyway. And so I think that corporations have no place at all, and I think we've made a good step in that direction.
Thank you. The next question, which has been asked by more than one person on the cards, which will first go to Guy Fogel. What is your position on the war in Afghanistan? Should we leave now?
I want to do a quick definition of two things that are taking place in Afghanistan. There's counterinsurgency, which is basically us protecting the good guys. We spend a lot of money and a lot of time doing that. In essence, taking care of people who should be slowly starting to take care of themselves. The second thing I want to define is counterterrorism, and that's where we go after the bad guys. That's where we have those small units that go out. We have the drone attacks, and we hit them and strike them in those small groups, minimizing some of the risk that our troops would face. I think that the counterinsurgency, protecting the good guy, needs to stop. We need to get out of there. That does not need, we need to leave. They need to take care of themselves. We're there for one reason, and it needs to be redefined. The reason we're there is to fight Al-Qaeda, to fight the Taliban, to take care of that situation, and we're losing focus with that. I get the fact that we want to, try to make them democratic, but it's not going to happen. We need to focus, again, on what we're doing, and that's getting rid of the bad guys, and let the folks who live there take care of themselves, because there's going to come a point when they have to make a decision how they want to live. Do they want to live in fear the rest of their lives, or do they want to have peace? Do they want to take care of their own situation? So in my estimation, yes, we need to bring a lot of the troops home, but I think we need to keep that counterterrorism group there, because the Al-Qaeda and the Taliban, that is a real threat. And the whole planet now is a playing field for that. And we need to go wherever they are and find them and take care of the matter. Thank you.
Same question to Joe Roberts. What's your position on the war in Afghanistan? Should we leave now?
Yeah, I think the war in Afghanistan is an interesting situation. We've seen it play out before. After the Soviets left Afghanistan, and we had funded the Afghani rebellion there, we sat back and we said, what do we do? Charlie Wilson, a congressman from Texas, said, what we really need to do now is build schools, build hospitals, and build roads so these people can take care of themselves and we'll have an infrastructure so they won't need to go to groups like the Taliban to support them. And Congress laughed. They said, that's ridiculous. Why would we do that? But you know what? We have a history of that. Look at after World War II. What did we do in Japan and in Europe? We rebuilt the countries. We made so that they could take care of themselves and have a decent quality of life. And when we did that, those people were able to govern themselves, take care of themselves, educate their children, and build economies. If we pull out of Afghanistan today without doing any kind of building and rebuilding of their nation, of a lot of which we have destroyed in this war, they will suffer. There's no question about that. Children will not be able to be educated. People will not be able to buy or have jobs. People will not be able to trade goods. And we're going to have a situation where they're going to turn to someone just like the Taliban, which they did in the 80s, which is the same reason that we're there now. We have to stop a cycle in Afghanistan of having a war-torn country where people are not able to control their own lives. And we are in a position today where we can do that. And I think that we must do it if we ever want to have peace in the Afghan region.
David Israedi, the war in Afghanistan, should we leave?
I'm not a chicken hawk like Mike Turner, and I know the difference between a war and political action. When you're in Special Forces, the first thing you learn about is Kurdistan. That war's been going on for 150 years. We're not going to win it. There are 4 wars going on as far as I can tell, and we're only winning one of them. There's a war in Afghanistan where we shouldn't be. There's a war in Iraq where we shouldn't be. There's a war on drugs which is decimating our own people and not helping the people of this country. And the last war is a class war being waged by the wealthy of this country against the working class American. And that's the war we're winning. And that's not us that's winning. We're on the losing end. It's time to stop building schools and hospitals and roads in Afghanistan, because Afghanistan is not a place that needs the same level of infrastructure that comes along with oil pipelines and all the other things that our corporations are worried about. People are used to living in caves in Afghanistan, and building them a school is not going to change things. It hasn't in the past, it hasn't now, and it's an absolute travesty that while we're laying off teachers, while we can't fund our schools, while we can't have health care, we're providing it for the Afghans. I don't know where this became a good idea, but the war on terror goes on all the time. We have people that take care of things, and we don't have to have 130,000 people in Iraq or in Afghanistan. We can take care of it. We can do it properly. It doesn't take F-35s, people. We've been misguided in spending way more than we should on defense, and it's time to get rational and get smart and stop. Thank you.
The next question first goes to Joe Roberts. It's reported that Congressman Turner has a huge campaign war chest and can raise money effectively. What makes you best suited to challenge him effectively, potentially with a lot less money? And particularly, how do you excite voters, especially Democrats who have voted for Mr. Turner in the past?
Well, I think we need to look at that statement from the ground up. What war chest, I think, is a good question. There's a myth that the guy has millions of dollars, and it's not true. At the end of the last filing period, he had $200,000. $200,000 for a 4th-term congressman. As a 4th-term congressman, I would expect him, like every other 4th-term congressman, to have $1.5 million. He doesn't. He's a notoriously bad fundraiser. We can catch up with the guy. And I don't think it's that hard to do. Even though we're in a short cycle, we're looking at a 4.5, 5-month cycle, we can spend dollar for dollar with this guy. But it's going to come from people in this community saying, you know what, I've had enough. I've had enough of this guy. We can beat him. He's not the right guy. There's something else out there. We hear, another thing we hear out on the stump a lot and talking to folks is that this district is gerrymandered for Mike Turner. It's not true. It's an R+3. An R+3 means that in a year where there was no campaigning done, he would win by 3 points. That's a swingable district. We're not talking about an R+12, an R+16. There's districts in Ohio, state senate districts, that are R+30s. That's not a swingable district. This district is swingable. We need someone to step up who can do the work and fight the man and show people what he really does and what he does and what he says are different. And if we can do that, we can win.
To Dave Israedi, it's reported that your opponent, if you're
I wrote the
selected-
question.
It's your question. You can answer.
I'm not 25 years old, and I'm not naive, because this is not an easy district, and Mike Turner has just enough money, that, as much as he needs, and he can raise more if he was challenged. But let's start out first. Number one, Jane Medicaitis has run twice, and she put an awful lot of her husband's money in, and she got trounced by 20 points each time. Dick Chema worked real hard to get a lot of money together. He got trounced. Rick Carney, the first candidate, he had money. He got trounced. And he was coming off of years of a Democratic district that had just been gerrymandered for Turner to win. This is not an easy district. And it's not an easy district because of the business I'm in. I'm in advertising. It used to be real easy. It was Montgomery County. You could buy some billboards, you could buy radio stations, TV stations in one media market, and you could get pretty good effectiveness. You can't buy it to reach down into Chillicothe and Hillsborough and Clinton County and Warren. The district is impossible to cover with conventional media without having to buy 4 media markets. That makes it a very expensive district. And I'm sorry, it's not going to be easy. That's why that big chunk of Huber Heights belongs to John Suntan Boehner. Okay? They made it as hard as possible. Now, the only way this is going to change is if you have a way to get your message out unconventionally. That's what they teach us in Special Forces, unconventional warfare. That's why I chalk sidewalks. That's why I use YouTube. That's why I have a blog that gets 1,000 unique visits per day, and I scoop the Dayton Daily News on almost at least once a month on major stories. People who've read my blog know that's where you turn for the inside scoop. I have the ability. I know Mike Turner's history. I've exposed him and his wife for their misdoings with taking money from political action committees for her husband, for his wife's work. I'll get back to this later. I can do it. Thank you.
Same question to Guy Tobin. If your opponent is better funded than you in a general election, how do you compete? And how do you excite voters, particularly Democrats who voted for Mr. Turner in the past?
Well, as David pointed out, I'm agreeing with him again. God, don't get the wrong idea. But Mike Turner does have money. It's somewhere. He's got money. And it's not going to be easy. This district is drawn up for this very thing, for him to be in office, for John Huston to be in office. I mean, the list goes on. John Boehner, you name it. And that doesn't mean that what we want to accomplish can't be accomplished, because the timing is right. People are starting, even Republicans. For some reason, there was an article recently, I don't know if you saw it, but I owed some child support. And you know what? Suddenly I'm the poster boy for it. I've had people come up to me and go, man, it's about time somebody standing up saying that times are tough, that, you know, we're having these issues and whatnot. And I said, well, I appreciate that, but that's really not, what this is about. And when they come up to me, they also start telling me their stories. And they're tired of it. And these are Republicans. These are Democrats. These are Americans. This is not a Democratic issue. It's not a Republican issue. It's an American issue. And people are tired of it. If you've been in office for 4 terms and this place still looks like this, your time's up. And they want to give somebody else a swing at it. And that's where we're at. And as David pointed out, you know what? We're not going to have it. I can't imagine being able to raise $1 gazillion. But you know what? We can raise enough to where we can pay gas to get people out on the streets, knocking on doors, getting our message out, that your life should be better. Your plot in life should be better. And your situation will get better if you make the change. And all we got to do is get out and do it. This is a grassroots situation. This is how Barack Obama got elected, guys. It was about getting out and beating on doors and getting the message face to face. Thank you.
I hope you folks realize we're not going to get to all your questions tonight, but there's a lot of great questions here, such as the following. We've got gridlock on our freeways. We've got a hole in the Gulf of Mexico hemorrhaging oil. We have opponents of rail development in Ohio. What's your personal position on both conservation and conversion to alternative and sustainable green sources of energy? That question first to Dave Ezra.
Well, it's not going to happen as long as Halliburton's still in charge, or BP, or people like, let's see, Miller Valentine Group, the National Association of Realtors, National Association of Home Builders over development, RG Properties. I'm just going down here the list of the people that give money to Mike Turner, General Dynamics, etc. Because, people, there's big money in sprawl. There's big money in making sure we put more and more money into highways. Like we just spent $75 million on Austin Road so that Teradata could move out of a 2.5-year-old building over to a newer building 2 blocks away. That's your money being wasted. Now, Mr. Roberts has talked about retooling those plants for green jobs and that we can all of a sudden magically become the green Silicon Valley. Now, if you traveled around the country a bit and you paid attention, there's everybody and their mother wants to be the next Silicon Valley, the next green job market. Michigan's actually beating us at getting green jobs. And you know what? That's not government's job. The way we're going to fix this is by stopping incentivizing sprawl. And I made a proposal quite a long time ago after coming out seeing Inconvenient Truth. Instead of having all these tax breaks for businesses based on where, relocating or where they're going, let's make it the only tax break you get is for the number of people that can walk to work. You go have your employees walking to work and you get a tax break because that is sustainable. That's going back to the old company town model. That's going back to what cities were built upon because cities are the most energy efficient way of putting people out together. We don't need to build any more McMansions out in Springboro and Warren County. We need farmland. We need to start moving back to local things. Local grown foods. We need to put it back together. That's how we're going to do it. Thank you.
To Joe Roberts, your position on conservation and conversion to alternative and sustainable green sources of energy.
Like I said, this is an issue that's very close to my heart. My time in Alaska, I worked tirelessly to prevent drilling in ANWR, the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. And we were successful. And it wasn't because, there wasn't big oil wanting to drill there. There was. But people stood up and said that's enough. And we're tired of it. And I think Mr. Ezrati's wrong. The job of government is to bring jobs. It is to help people survive. It is to make communities flourish. And the best way to do that, in my opinion, is to focus on a new economy that will bring people and dollars back into our communities. Like I said, we're not going to get those old jobs back. It has to be something new. We have to focus on the future, and the future is changing. The economy's changing. It has to go to a green technology. It has to go to a green economy. And it's not going to be easy to become the green Silicon Valley. Governor Strickland was in town last week where they opened a solar panel in Southwest Ohio, the first one in Ohio that's going to go on the energy grid. And he said, we're way behind. And he's right. We are way behind. So we've got to catch up. And that means using those stimulus dollars, putting them into to upgrading our grid to a smart grid for energy, for bringing in businesses that are really focused on creating green technology and creating green products. And I think the way to do that is to create a private-public partnership that will work between communities and people and the government to help fund these initiatives. We're a town of innovation. We're known for it. And I think we can do it now. But it's going to take work. It's going to take people coming together. It's going to take the city, the county, the state, and federal level all to come together and say, this is what we want. We're going to work towards one thing and bring us up to speed. And I think it's completely possible, but we've got to put our mind to it.
Same question about global conservation, conversion to alternative and sustainable green energy sources.
Well, I support initiatives decreasing our dependence on foreign oil and expanding our utilization of clean fuels. And there's 2 reasons for that. One, if we can get away from the fuel situation, which has got us in the Middle East and got us tied to that situation, amen. If we can also get green initiatives moving here, that creates jobs. And in fact, along those lines, the research and development tax breaks that companies get, I would like to see those made permanent. I would like to see them enhanced and made permanent. Currently, there are a lot of companies around this area that utilize those R&D grants, those R&D tax breaks. And 2/3 of that money, they're paying for wages. So the way I see it is if we can make those permanent and enhance them, meaning find a way to give those companies more in research and development, more jobs are going to open up, because that's what we need right now. We need employment here. I know. I've been unemployed quite a bit the last 4 years. I have a master's. It doesn't matter. I've lived out of my car a time or two, guys. It doesn't matter where you're from. Many of you in this room might be in the same situation. Many of you might be one paycheck away from it, one illness away from it, as I was. And it's not going anywhere until we bring in jobs. And you know what? Any initiative that has the possibility of bringing jobs here, I'm for it. I'm jumping on the bandwagon. And I think one way to do that is for us to start exploring clean fuels, for us to start getting away from our dependence on foreign oil, and for us to start giving those R&D companies a little bit more of the breaks that they need in order to create jobs. Thank you.
The next question, again from the audience, goes right back to Guy Fogel. The question is, how do you achieve a balance between affecting the economy with another stimulus initiative on the one hand and reducing the deficit by cutting services on the other?
Well, I'm going to go a different route with that question. And I was asked the other day, and I've been asked this question a couple of times. I had a meeting in Clinton County, was asked it. I had a meeting in Warren County, and then the other day at the Dayton Daily News Board. And the question was, would I have voted for the stimulus bill? And I said, absolutely. We need that money. The follow-up question was, would you vote for another one? And I said no, and here's why. Because we have to find some accountability as to that money first. This is your money. This is money out of our pockets going, we don't know where. I was told, two people have said, well, you can pull up on the website. No, there's still a lot of money sitting out there. Why isn't it being used? Let's find where that money's supposed to go and get that dealt with first, and then let's talk about another stimulus bill. I think there are other ways to go, but one thing that we need to do, the Democratic platform, the initiatives for helping people, for giving people a chance, for fighting for people is awesome. But we also have to have that accountability measure in there. There is accountability. And I'm not saying no to a second stimulus. I'm just simply saying, let's step back for a moment, have a look at it, the first round, and see where it went and where we could best serve that money. So the second time we give out stimulus money, I'd be all for it if it specifically says this is where it goes. The money's going here. Yeah, that's a good idea. That's the approach that I would take with the stimulus. Thank you. David, same question.
Same question. How was that? Balancing between the economy, stimulus, and deficit cutting by service cutting.
You know, it's funny, here we go again with the two options, right? So we always have two options in this country. It's as if we can't have more than two solutions to anything. It's either more stimulus or cut services, more taxes or less, it's always two. Like, we're not able to have a multifaceted discussion and approach things many different ways. The first thing I learned in Special Forces is there's not just one way to do things. There's not just two ways to do things. There's a bazillion of them. The question is what gets the job done? And the stimulus hasn't been getting the job done because there is no requirement for any of these people that are getting this money in the bailouts to actually hire people, make sure people are getting employed and paying taxes back so that we don't strain our social services. The banks are sitting on the cash, the companies are not hiring, the people aren't buying, and we've got 5 people for every job. So how do we fix that? We stop having the casino on Wall Street in full bore in operation with no rules and restrictions. We get rid of their derivative markets, their secondary markets, their credit default swaps, which are like insurance that you buy so you can go to Vegas, gamble, lose, and still get paid. It's time to stop hedge fund traders from making $1 billion in a year. And it wasn't just one, it was 25 of them. And if you wonder where your pension money went, that's where it went. Because we've lost all accountability, all responsibility. You get paid whether your company loses money or makes money. That's got to stop. We're at war. We have 10% plus unemployment. It's time to say you don't get paid over $1 million unless it's your money. You're a private company, privately held, or you're taxed at a ridiculous rate until you start putting that money back in the American people's hands. Because we need jobs, we need them now. We don't need any more of these prima donnas because they've been screwing things up for way too long, and it's time to stop.
Same question to Joe Roberts. How do you achieve a balance between affecting the economy with another stimulus initiative and reducing the deficit by cutting services?
Well, I think, first off, stimulus was completely necessary. I don't think that anyone in Congress sat down and said, today I'd like to write a $787 billion check. It was a decision that was made after a lot of thought, a lot of debate, and taking a really hard look at our economy and what works. The fact is, we know when you stimulate the economy, it works. We've seen the effects of this start. We know that we're coming out of a recession. It's a lot slower than anyone would have liked, and it's painful for a lot of people. But the fact is that those dollars are working. Now, a vast majority of those dollars have still not been put into the system, but we need someone to go to Washington and fight to have those dollars appropriated. I intend to go to Washington and fight for every single penny of stimulus dollars to come back here, to build roads, build schools, build bridges, put people back to work. And we do have to look at the long run, right? We can't just spend and spend and spend. It's dangerous. But we can't keep using a credit card and borrowing from China. So what do we do? Well, historically we know that in the Great Depression, we spent, we got ourselves out, we paid back later. And that's what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to go until we can't go and get ourselves out of this spot when we can look back and say, okay, you know what, we're stable. Then we'll have to do what everybody has to do. We're going to tighten the belt, like any family is doing now. We're going to say, look, what programs aren't working, what's not being funded correctly, and let's cut that, and let's pay back our debt. But it's not going to happen until we can get ourselves on our feet. If we can't get ourselves on our feet, then there will be no country. And that's what we really have to look at.
The next question goes first to Joe Roberts, and the question is, what's your position on California's Proposition 8?
That was Proposition 8 is something I was watching very closely on election night 2008. It was one of those things where I said, this possibly could not happen, especially in a state like California, right? It was disgusting. Frankly, I will say that I was disgusted by it. I think it's a set a precedent that's dangerous in our country, where it took rights, basic civil rights and basic human rights away from people. America's not a place that's about taking away people's rights. I was always taught that we're a country that gives people rights. People want to come live in the United States because they want to achieve something. They want freedom. And what we did, and what California did, by taking away the right of same-sex marriage, was awful. We stepped back. I think that we're coming to a point in this country where this issue is getting so heated that we're going to have to make some tough decisions. And it's going to take law at the federal level, and maybe even a Supreme Court decision, to make marriage equality across the board a reality in this country. And it needs to happen. I mean, this is a situation where we have millions of people in this country every day who are discriminated against by the law in a way that we shouldn't stand for as Americans. And we haven't stood for it when it happened to any other group, but we're okay to stand up and say, this is different, these people are different, and we should be allowed to discriminate. I think it's wrong. I think we need to create equality across the board for all people, and it doesn't matter if they're gay, if they're black, if they're white. It doesn't make a difference. Everyone needs the same equality in the United States, and I intend to fight for it every day of my life.
Next question to Guy Fogel, your position on Proposition 8. And it's from the audience.
Okay. Our country was founded by people looking for a better way of life, by people who wanted to have freedom, people who wanted to have liberties. And our been very peculiar over the decades about pointing to the groups that, yes, you can come in, you can have these rights and freedoms, yes, you can sit at this table, yes, you can do that, and yet turning our back on other folks. And I feel the same way that I was disturbed by it. I think that it set us back. We start taking these steps forward, granting people rights and privileges, and then freedoms, and then we take a step back. And that bothered me. And we got to stop looking at it from a standpoint of people in little groups and pockets and increments, because that's the way Congress is working now. Works that way in terms of class, socioeconomics, race, and now we're doing it in terms of same-sex marriage, and that bothers me as well. That's where I stand on it. Thank you.
All men are created equal. Yeah, they left the women out, but they meant all mankind, humankind. I don't know how far back you have. I mean, it's right there at the beginning. It's quite simple, and it needs to be taken care of. If we're going to be the land of the free and the home of the brave, we got to get brave, and we got to put a stop to this. Personal choice is part of freedom. Freedom is part of democracy. We're not getting a whole lot of either the way things are going. And until we empower people again and allow them to live their lives in ways that do not affect others adversely, we're in deep, deep trouble. It's time that we have fair elections. We stop voting on things that should be fundamentally correct and get back to the basics of what brought the people over from all over this planet to this country, a place where you can be and believe in whatever you want to believe in, do what you want to do, and succeed. And it's not going to happen as long as we keep passing laws telling other people what they can and can't do. We have more people in prison in this country than any other free country in the world. We have to do something about that. We have to stop criminalizing and ruling some people are less equal than others. 1984 came and went. Animal Farm's over. All men are created equal. Let them marry. Thank you.
David Israeli, this is going right back to you. This morning we heard statistics reflecting a 40% drop in the value of homes that are subject to foreclosure in the state of Ohio. How will you advocate from Washington for our cities and neighborhoods that are being crippled by the ongoing foreclosure crisis?
40% is actually pretty good from some of the numbers I've seen. I've seen houses at 70% of what their value is. My own home is over 50, according to Bank of America, who is like the fourth company that's held the loan on my house. I never wanted to do business with Bank of America. That's who I ended up doing business with. And when you know it, just a couple weeks ago, guess who bought my loan? IBM. We don't make computers anymore. We don't make things in this country anymore. We have financial services out of one of America's great bank businesses. So they now hold the loan. It's time to stop this absolute insanity. And when you make a loan, you have to keep the loan. Point, clear, simple. And we have to go back, and Mr. Roberts was talking about investment after the Depression. The very first thing they did was Glass-Steagall. We need to bring it back. We have to put a separation between banking, insurance, and investments. Because you can't play all three games and still be serving the people that you're providing these essential service to, called banking. We've got it all wrong. Glass-Steagall needs to be reenacted, and reenacted now. We need to say when a bank kicks somebody out of the house, that they are responsible for keeping that house in the exact same condition it was in when they kicked the people out. I'm sick of seeing people walk away from homes and have the homes then depreciate wildly because they're getting stripped of their copper, they're getting stripped of their appliances, their electrical, the grass isn't being cut. I want the banks held accountable. And if those people don't have jobs, it's because the banks aren't making the loans to the companies to hire people. And the people aren't hiring them because there's no incentive to. Because we think it's okay to have a privileged class in this country that can pay themselves $2,000 an hour while losing 2/3 of the company value and move NCR off to Georgia. That's got to stop. Thank you. Who's up next?
Again, the question is, how do you advocate from Washington for our cities and neighborhoods crippled by the foreclosure crisis?
Well, as someone who has lived it, as my medical bills were piling in, and I was not able to stay above water, I started having conversations with my mortgage company. What can we do? This is my situation. I want to work with you. Help me here. For 2 weeks, I had conversations. Very nice lady. I then call her the third week, and it had been sold. The mortgage had been sold to somebody else. So I get that company on the line, and I go through about a month. What can I do? Month into that conversation, it was sold again. And these are companies that's all they do. They buy these mortgages and squeeze whatever they can out of it, and if they don't think they're going to get anything from it, they get rid of them. Well, and here's where it gets sticky. Because the fifth mortgage company held my house. I said, pleading with them, what can I do? I'm still making payments, mind you, but I can't keep making the same amount of payments. I'm making less payments to them. They increased my mortgage payment by $270. I then found out that I was going to lose the home. Came in a nice certified letter. It was beautiful. Foreclosure. I found out that the company then, there was a group of investors that bought it from that mortgage company, they're interlinked. The people that bought my house at a discount from that mortgage company, then fixed the house up and sold it to somebody. And they made twice what they had made in it. That's got to stop. That has to stop at the legislative level. It has to stop in Washington, D.C. Decisions need to be made about keeping all those things separate. If you're going to, I wholeheartedly agree, if you're going to give somebody a mortgage, you stay with that mortgage. All the way through. And none of this shenanigans where you shift and you move things around and confuse people. And it's happening to a lot of people out in the community. Because again, I've turned out to be the poster boy all of a sudden for it. And they're coming out of the woodwork. Thank you.
Same question, how do you deal with the foreclosure crisis from Washington?
Well, I think Congress is making some steps here. You know, we've got a financial reform package that's moving through Congress now. And I heard an interview with Barney Frank, chair of the banking committee last week. He said, if this bill passes and banks don't make as much money next year as they did this year, then we did a good job. If their revenues go up, we didn't do our job and I wasted a year of my life. And I agree with that. I mean, banks, you know, I have worked at a bank. It's a horrible industry. It's dehumanizing to average people. It provides a service. And what do we do with people who provide services? We hold them accountable. But with banks, they've decided that they can get away with anything they want, and it's wrong. You know, this financial reform bill that's moving through now addresses mortgages in specific ways that I think are wonderful. First, it says no more of this variable rate interest stuff. You know, you're not going to get a mortgage that's going to be 36% next year when it starts out at $300 this year. We're going to go back to requiring companies to give normal, fixed rate, 30-year loans. And if they don't, we're going to fine them. We're going to tax them more. And I think that's great. I think that's the way it should be. We need to be advocating for sensible solutions. If we look at these mortgages that are a lot of them are underwritten, that are ridiculous. They hired mathematicians from Yale to come in and write the numbers on these things. The guys who are selling them don't even understand how they work, let alone the person who's signing the loan and buying the home. We need to make sure that everything's straightforward. There's no reason a mortgage should be a 30-page document. It should be 1 or 2 pages, straightforward, to the point, and tell you what you owe and how you pay it. And every month it should be the same thing. And if we can do that, we can change the system. Now the other thing we need to do is work with people who are behind. We need to make sure we follow every avenue before we take someone's home. We need to say, hey, you know what? Your home's lost value. You're way over your head. What we need to do is the bank should probably, because they wrote that loan, even though it may have been a bad loan, they may have written 125%. They need to say, you know what? We're willing to take a cut too. Rather than you lose your home, we're all willing to work. That's what we need.
A member of the audience is going to change this up a little bit for us, and this question first goes to Guy Fogel. Do you have a favorite book that may help us more completely understand your positions and beliefs?
It's often referred to as the Book of Joy. It's Philippians in the New Testament. And the Book of Joy talks about overcoming adversity, having the light, and following that light, and no matter what happens, representing that light. That book means a great deal to me because the 2 times that I battled cancer and had to refer to it several times as kind of a pick-me-up. And I remember, in particular, one day when I was feeling not so well, and I remember I opened it up and I started reading and I counted. And how many times joy is mentioned in the book of Philippians. And just having that in my pocket of knowledge, having something to fall back on, is something that's very important to me. It means a great deal to me. It's something that I encountered when I was a kid, and it's something that I took all the way through college and up through now. So the book that probably best exemplifies something about me would be the book of Philippians in the New Testament. Thank you.
To Joe Roberts.
Coming around on the other side, big fella.
Same question, favorite book that will tell us something about you?
You know, I have a lot. I'm a big reader. But I read a book that came out about 2 years ago about Andrew Jackson called American Lion. Andrew Jackson is my favorite president, I think. You know, the first president of the people, first populace. He didn't run a race that was, traditional in the 1800s. He kind of stood up and said, I'm going to go from town to town on horseback, and I'm going to talk to people and find out what they need. And I think that is a way that I want to live my political life. I think that we've gotten away from listening to average people. That we don't know what their problems are, or at least our elected officials don't. They don't hear their needs, and they certainly don't act on those needs. And so, I think that it's important that we have someone go to Washington who will say, hey, you know what, I'm open, my door's open. We have a tradition of that here. We had Tony Hall, who was an accessible politician. If you needed something from Tony Hall's office, he was available. We had Chuck Whalen, who was the same way. He was an accessible guy. We don't have that now. I intend to, if I get elected, to have a 24-hour line with someone always working to answer constituent concerns. Because, if you have a real problem and you need to get a hold of someone in Congress to help you, you might need that at 2 o'clock in the morning. Well, you can't always wait till 9 a.m. And I think that being a real person and understanding that real people have needs is the best thing that we could possibly do. And so I intend to be that guy. I intend to fight for you, to listen to your needs, and figure out what's the best way we can work together to get things done.
I find it fascinating that Mr. Roberts talks about Chuck Whalen, because as far as I can do the calculations, I'm not even sure he was even born when Chuck Whalen was in the House. But there is a book that I talked about earlier that I think is very special. I make it available to all of you. It's about 70 pages long. It's a PDF. It's Dear Son, Do You Want to Be an American? Do you really want to be an American? It was written by my father to me, talking about what it means to be an American. My father has a master's degree in political science from Boston University. My father speaks 5 languages. His dream was to become a diplomat, work in the Foreign Service, but because of some of the things that he was involved in, because he believed in them, the United States government didn't deem him quite their material. He wasn't okay for that, but he was perfectly fine to serve in one of the 1st Special Forces Reserves units because he had the skills they needed to do that. But there's the history lesson that you get when you go to school in those books that are okayed by the state of Texas Board of Education. And then there's the real history of the United States. My father gives it to you straight. And I highly recommend you go to Azariah.com / I think it's free book or just book. It's right there at the top. Download it, take a read. It won't take very long. And it'll give you an enlightened view of what America stands for, how our democracy works, what we're supposed to be doing. And it's been, every time I reread it, it reminds me that there were a lot of people who fought hard and suffered so that we could have the freedoms that we have today. And it's part of the reason I am who I am and why I keep tilting at windmills and why I believe that I can go against Mike Turner and ask the hard questions and turn this country around, because it's not going to come from somebody that sounds like the same old political, yeah, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, just the way we've always done it. It's going to have to be somebody who says things differently, how we do things differently. Do you mean 1 minute or do you mean stop? Stop. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This is the candidates were each allowed to submit questions, and we've hit one off of each two of their lists, and this is from a third candidate's list, and it's the final question before the closing comments. And the question is, would you endorse and support the winner of this primary if it's not you? Why or why not? I'll go to Joe Roberts.
You know, I think this question is great. And I think it's great because in a primary situation, we often forget what the real goal is. The real goal is not for us as Democrats to sit around and beat each other up and to say bad things about each other and badmouth each other. The goal is to push forward democratic ideals and values in this country. So I'm willing to say, yes, I run a clean campaign. I'm willing to say that I would support the Democratic nominee if that was up to someone other than myself. Now, being said, I think I'm the best candidate for the job, and I'd love your support. But I think we've gotten away from what really matters. And that what really matters here is that we're supporting each other as Democrats, and we're supporting the ideas that really matter. We're supporting things like overturning Proposition 8, and we're supporting things like helping the people of Afghanistan, and we're supporting things like cleaning up our own messes that we've gotten into around the world. And that's what matters, not that I'm a better person than you, or I don't think that you're smart enough, or that you're good enough, but that we're all Democrats, and we all believe in somewhat the same thing, and that we all should work together to get things done.
Would you endorse and support the winner of this primary if it's not you?
You know, I wrote that question, and
You did.
yes, actually it was a part of a conversation I was having with someone else. And there's a couple of things about it, though, that Mr. Roberts is absolutely right. This is not about us as individuals. This is about us collectively. It's about a movement. It's about Americans. It's about fixing our democracy. And there are things that I have gotten to know both candidates a little bit because of these forums. And there are things that I feel strongly about that we're opposed. And I'm okay with that. Because again, the larger goal is beating Mike Turner and creating a better situation. I would think that as you guys walk out the door tonight, that you have in your mind who you want, who you're leaning toward. And I'm not going to sit here and pander for your vote. I'm not going to beg you for your vote. I want to ask you this, though. Whoever you decide, tell other people. Get other people excited about it. Get other people involved. Get them to the polls on July 13th. Because with such a small situation with 4 polling centers, anything can happen. And if you feel strongly about your candidate, start speaking up, telling people, you know what, hey, July 13th, you'd be surprised how many people are unclassified. They think they're Republicans, but they're not. There are people who think they're Democrats, but they're listed as UNC, they're unclassified. Talk to them. Even if you think they're Republican, talk to them and encourage them to get out and vote. And the second thing is, you know what? You're probably like me. I had to borrow gas money to get here tonight. You know what? $20, $25. Support whoever it is you choose. Support them. Not only in spirit, but financially and also physically, getting out and helping that person. Thank you.
I got to say, it's refreshing to hear that question instead of the questions usually asked by the Montgomery County Democratic Party's screening committee upstairs. I'm glad we're down here and not upstairs, because upstairs the first question they ask you is, if we don't endorse you, will you drop out? They actually make it so that we don't have choices in a primary. And I'm pleased as punch to say you got 3. And it would have been better if you had 6. Although we would have been here a lot longer tonight. But my vision of democracy and how the Democratic Party works is very different from that that's been running Montgomery County for a long time. I think that screening committee's job is to get as many qualified candidates prepped and ready and lined up and groomed to run for every office at every election, run hard, run strong, and win. And that's why I got elected. I ran and became the precinct captain for my precinct. And I'm going to work with other precinct captains in my ward. And we're going to get out and we're going to go door to door and knock on everybody's door and make sure that Democrats get elected. Because that's what it's about. Whether it's my name that ends up on the top, Mr. Fogel's, Mr. Roberts, as long as it's not Mike Turner, and as long as the money isn't coming from all these corporations that have given him money over the years. We've got to take our country back, and it's not going to happen unless every one of you gets involved, goes knocking on doors, and works real hard this November. Because it's that important. We need to take and win back every single office that's out there. Because it's time. It's our right, and it's what's got to happen. So yes, of course, I'm going to work to help anybody beat Mike Turner, because Mike Turner's beaten us for way too long, and it's time for it to stop. Thank you.
At this time, we'll ask the candidates to make their closing comments, and the rotation will be first to Guy Fogel, then to David Israedi, and then to Joe Roberts.
There was one year I taught high school for many years, and I also was a head basketball coach, but one year they wanted me to be a mentor teacher. And it was a young teacher. And she came in the first week, and about the 4th day, she had a group of freshmen. And I have a son that is going to be a senior, and I have a son who's going to be an 8th grader. And so I know freshmen. And these freshmen spotted weakness, and they were sharks. She walked in her classroom and for some reason decided she needed to leave that classroom. And when she left, the classroom lost all effectiveness. It took her months to get that classroom back because she left the building. That's what's happened to District 3. Mike Turner's left. And look what's happened. I'm not a conventional candidate. I'm anything but. I'm not a politician. Don't claim to be. Don't want to be. But I want to have this opportunity to represent you. To represent you with your ideas. Notice I said your ideas. That I probably can relate to because I've lived it. And I want to represent you with honor and integrity. You know, one of the neatest things happened the other day. The Dayton Daily News ran some information about the 3 of us, and they put, there's a letter that was in the paper that my children wrote about me, 2 of my 3. My 3-year-old probably said thumbs up, but you know, he wasn't involved in it. But 2 of my kids wrote a letter, and they talked about me being a good dad, and about how they thought I would be good in this job. I know I have 2 votes, if only they were 18. But I'm asking you to vote for me. If you need more information about me, to ask me, tell you anything you want to know. Pretty much everything's already been out there, and I wanted it that way because my situation is a situation that a lot of folks have lived. But I got to tell you, I've had a cool life. I'm not a victim. Man, I did television for 20 years. I had a chance, I had Reggie White wrap his arm around me and give me a kiss on my forehead. Are you kidding me? How many people would want that? You know what? I owned a pizzeria sports bar. You know how many people would kill to do that? It was awesome. I worked in hospice for United Healthcare. I got a chance to go around and see what healthcare is supposed to be about. I was a school teacher, and I still hear from my students years later. Man, that's a life I've lived. I've had so many things happen to me in my life. It's just been wonderful. And a lot of people would love to have all those things happen in their life. But yeah, I've had some things sprinkled in between there. You know what? It's been tough here and there, but that's what makes me who I am. And that's what makes me uniquely qualified to represent you, because I've been all across the board, all across the spectrum. I ask for your vote. Thank you.
3 minutes, that's what you get at the Dayton City Commission meeting. I should be very practiced at it. Ryan McGlynn once told me she's not a politician, she's an elected representative. At least that's how she liked to think of herself, and that stuck with me for an awful long time. Being an elected representative, being a representative is something that I take very seriously. I've been a big brother to an inner city youth starting when he was 10. He's now 33. He lives a block away from me. I see him pretty much every other day, still, all these years later. I've done work in my community. I've been our neighborhood president. I put our neighborhood back together. I've served in the military. I've got a small business. I've employed people. They've gone on to work at better, bigger places. I've gone and protested what I thought were illegal secret meetings of the Dayton City Commission. I was arrested by Mike Turner, and he took me to court with your money, and he lost over and over and over and over. I've been fighting for you, for the right to have open, honest government for over 20 years now. I have a blog, and the Dayton Daily News writes it off. Oh, he's a blogger. They're bloggers. It's the same technology that they post on the web. It puts your newest stuff up first and the other stuff later. There's no secret to it. The secret is that I'm not afraid. I've exposed some pretty big things. I've exposed things that one day, right after my parents moved in, I'm down, my parents now live right across the street from me. My office is on the corner. I'm down there talking to my parents, and my office manager called and said, the FBI is here to talk to you. My father said my face turned white. I go down there, and there are these two guys looking like football stars, and they start asking me questions. And what are they asking me questions about? How did I figure out how the Dayton Development Coalition got all that money to give to Mike Turner's wife? How did I figure out that she had a GSA schedule and was doing work for the Army Corps of Engineers when her husband was on the Armed Services Committee? How did I figure out that she's doing work for the Home Depot Political Action Committee out of Atlanta, and he's also getting money from the Home Depot PAC? How did Cubase get all this money from the government, yet all their employees one day gave $1,000 each to Steve Austria, like 17 of them. They never given money before, but all of a sudden they all give money to Steve Austria. That's the kind of stuff you find on my blog that you don't see in the Dayton Daily News, sometimes until almost a year later. I'm doing public service now. And if you want to find out where I stand on issues, you just go to Israeli.com and you do a search, because it's all there in black and white. You ask me a question, you get a response. That's what we need in Washington, and that's what I hope to do for you. Thank you.
You know, I think we're at an interesting place here, and I think it's interesting because Mr. Israeli wants to say I'm naive and I'm 25 years old, which I am 25 years old. There's no denying that. I don't think that's a negative thing. I think that means that I come from a different generation, and I have different ideas, and it's fresh, and it's new, and it's something that people haven't heard. If elected, I'd be the youngest member of Congress. I would probably You know, in Congress, the youngest member is usually seen as a rising star, gets good committee assignments, can help their communities. That's not why I'm running. I'm not running because I want to be a politician and I want, you know, to line my pockets like our good friend Mike Turner. I'm running because I believe in people. I remember, and I'm sure you all do too, Election Day 2008. I poured my heart and soul into working for the president. And I sat there on election night, and when they announced his victory, I started to cry. I'd never felt that before about politics, and I don't think I'd ever feel it again. And I don't claim to be any Barack Obama, don't get me wrong. But I think we need to believe in something, and we need to believe that we can win this seat, and we need to believe that some candidate can come up, and he may be 25 years old, but he can do it. Because he's got the right ideas, and because he wants to beat this guy for everybody else, not for himself. Not to make himself famous, to listen to people and hear their concerns and put those concerns into action. And that's what I intend to do. I intend to fight for you every day. But I need your help, and I need someone to believe. And I hope you can. Thank you.
And we thank all of you in attendance for your questions. We especially thank League member Susan Byerly for keeping the time. Education Director Susan Hesselgesser for putting this all together. With a great past leader and symbol of this league, Vivian Himmel, who's here tonight. We thank Mark Owens for opening up the Democratic Hall here for this event. And we thank David Ezrati, Guy Fogle, and Joe Roberts for participating in this process. Remember, there are only 4 polling places on July 13th. There's information in the back to assist you in finding those and identifying them. It's in the front, it's the yellow sheet. Thank you for participating, and thank you for being here tonight. Candidates, thank you very much.
Thank you.